I knew marrying an alien diplomat would involve paperwork, cultural briefings, and at least one moment where I nodded solemnly without understanding a single word. I did not expect the part where my soul felt like it had been plugged into a shared audio channel with interference. The ceremony itself was beautiful in a way that made my chest ache. The hall shimmered with bioluminescent patterns that responded to emotion, pulsing softly as my bride held my hands. She was radiant, tall, elegant, her skin carrying that faint, pearlescent glow her people had when they were calm and happy. Her eyes never left mine, and every time she smiled, it felt like the universe leaned in a little closer to listen. I'd fallen for her because she was gentle in a galaxy that respected force, because she listened when humans spoke instead of assuming we were loud primitives with interesting muscles. She laughed at my jokes, even the bad ones, and she asked questions about Earth like it mattered. When she said she loved me, it wasn't dramatic or possessive. It was quiet, steady, and terrifyingly sincere. The bond ritual came next. I'd been told it would feel warm. That was the official translation. Warm was doing a lot of work there. The moment the final phrase was spoken and the light flared around us, something settled into my chest, like a deep breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding my entire life. I felt connected, anchored, impossibly calm. My bride exhaled in relief, her fingers tightening around mine as if she'd been holding back a tide. Everyone applauded. Diplomatic aides smiled. Someone played a note on an instrument I couldn't identify, but that made my spine tingle in a pleasant way. It was perfect. And then, about 3 seconds later, I felt cocky. Not confident. Cocky. Like I'd just won an argument I hadn't known I was having. My posture straightened without permission. A ridiculous thought drifted through my head, something about how the room looked better with me in it, and I nearly choked on my own breath. That wasn't me. I glanced at my bride. She was blushing, which for her species involved a subtle shift of color along her cheekbones. She looked happy. A little embarrassed. But calm. The feeling passed as quickly as it came, replaced by warmth again. I chalked it up to adrenaline and the fact that I'd just married someone who technically outranked several planetary governments. The reception was when things got weird. I was halfway through a drink that tasted like citrus and electricity when a presence slid into my awareness, not physically, but emotionally. It was like someone had opened a door in my head without knocking. Suddenly, I felt amused. Bold. Curious in a way that had nothing to do with the glass in my hand. I turned, and that's when I saw her. She looked like my wife, in the same way lightning looks like a candle flame. Same species, same striking features, but where my wife was composed, her sister was all sharp confidence and unapologetic energy. She smiled like she knew something I didn't, her gaze sweeping over me with open interest. The moment our eyes met, the emotional spike hit again, stronger this time. Confidence surged through me, unearned and inappropriate. I had the insane urge to grin back like this was a game I'd already decided to win. I did not grin. I coughed. Loudly. Into my drink. My sister, my wife said softly, appearing at my side as if summoned by the disturbance. Her hand slid into mine, grounding me instantly. The extra emotions dulled, retreating like a wave hitting a breakwater. Her sister raised an elegant brow. So that's him, she said, her voice smooth and entirely too amused. Interesting. I'm standing right here, I said before my brain could stop my mouth. The sister laughed. Not offended. Delighted. The emotional feedback flared again, approval, interest, a spark of something dangerously close to attraction that was very much not originating from me. My wife squeezed my hand. Hard. We made it through the rest of the reception with only minor incidents. By minor, I mean I accidentally laughed at a joke that hadn't been translated yet, felt offended by a comment no one had made out loud, and at one point had to excuse myself because I suddenly felt the overwhelming urge to straighten my jacket and pose like I was in a propaganda poster. Back in our private quarters, the door sealed behind us, and the silence finally gave me room to think. Okay, I said carefully. I love you. Today was amazing. But I need to ask, why do I feel like my emotions are being borrowed without my consent? My wife froze. That was not a good sign. She turned slowly, hands folding together in front of her, shoulders drawing in just a bit. I recognized that posture. It was her. I have made a diplomatic error. Posture. There is, she began gently, a small cultural detail I may have failed to emphasize. I waited. My people, she continued, eyes flicking away for half a second, sometimes form overlapping soul resonances within immediate family units. I blinked. Overlapping? Yes. Family units? Yes. And by sometimes you mean? She sighed, color deepening along her cheeks. Siblings. The room went very still. I thought about the confidence spikes. The boldness. The way everything settled when I held my wife's hand. The way it spiked again when her sister walked into the room. You're telling me, I said slowly, that when I married you, I accidentally subscribed to a shared emotional network. She winced. When you say it like that, it sounds worse than it is. Her sister's voice echoed in my memory. Interesting. I sat down heavily on the edge of the bed. Does she feel everything? Not everything, my wife said quickly. Only what resonates strongly. Attraction. Confidence. Emotional intent. Great, I muttered. So family dinners are going to be a minefield. My wife knelt in front of me, taking my hands, her touch steady and familiar. The emotional noise vanished instantly, replaced by her warmth, her calm, her love. I chose you, she said firmly. The bond does not change that. I believed her. Completely. Unfortunately, I also had a sinking suspicion that her sister had just chosen me too, whether I liked it or not. And tomorrow night, we were having dinner with the family. If I'd believed in mercy, the universe would have cancelled the family dinner. Instead, it arrived right on time. The next evening, I stood outside the residence wing designated for intimate familial bonding, which sounded harmless until translated into human terms as a place where no one leaves with dignity. My wife adjusted the formal sash around my shoulders, her movements careful, affectionate, and clearly apologetic. You can still request diplomatic illness, she offered quietly. I'm human, I said. If I fake being sick, someone will want to study it. She smiled despite herself and leaned in to press her forehead against mine. The contact was instant relief. The emotional static that had been buzzing at the edges of my thoughts settled, warmth replacing it like a familiar gravity. That alone told me everything I needed to know about where I belong. The doors opened. The room was large, circular, and arranged to encourage eye contact, an architectural sin if you asked me. Several members of her extended family were already seated, their expressions polite, curious, and a little too interested. I felt like a rare exhibit that had just been released from its containment field. Then the emotional shift hit. Confidence. Amusement. A pulse of anticipation that had nothing to do with food. Her sister lounged across the table, one leg crossed casually, chin resting in her hand. She hadn't even looked at me yet, but the emotional feedback was unmistakable. It rolled through my chest like a warm breeze carrying bad decisions. I stiffened. My wife felt it too. Her fingers tightened around mine, not possessively, just enough to remind both of us that we were connected first. We sat. Conversation flowed in several languages, most of which were translated directly into my ear implant with varying degrees of accuracy. I answered questions about Earth, about human customs, about whether our species truly formed pair bonds without biochemical enforcement. Yes, I said for the 5th time. We choose. That word sent a ripple through the room. I felt it before I saw it, interest sharpening, curiosity spiking. Especially from across the table. So, the sister said at last, eyes finally meeting mine. The emotional surge was immediate, like someone had turned up the volume on my own presence. You really did agree to bind yourself permanently to one partner. I cleared my throat. That's generally how marriage works for us. Her smile widened. Amusement, approval, something dangerously close to admiration echoed through the bond. I hated how easy it would have been to bask in it. Fascinating, she said. You must have tremendous restraint. I just have priorities, I replied. The emotional feedback hiccuped. Confusion this time. Surprise. My wife hid her smile behind a sip of her drink. The dinner progressed, and with it, my growing understanding of the problem. Whenever my wife spoke, the emotional field softened: love, reassurance, comfort. Whenever her sister leaned in, laughed, or directed her attention toward me, everything sharpened. Confidence spiked. Awareness heightened. It was like standing between two suns, one warm and steady, the other brilliant and reckless. At one point, the sister leaned forward, resting her elbows on the table. Do you feel it? She asked casually. Feel what? I asked, already knowing. The resonance, she said. The way you respond when I focus on you. The room went quiet. Several relatives leaned in, clearly invested. I chose my words carefully. I feel interference, I said. Like someone borrowed my emotions without asking. A beat of silence. Then the sister laughed, delighted. The feedback flared, approval mixed with something sharp and intrigued. Honest, she said. I like that. I'm married, I replied. I know, she said easily. That's what makes this interesting. My wife set her glass down with a soft click. The warmth from her side intensified, steady and unyielding. I felt her certainty like an anchor. My husband's emotions are not a puzzle to be solved, she said calmly. The sister tilted her head, studying her. Through the bond, I felt something unexpected: respect. Not enough to stop her, but enough to slow her down. After dinner, things somehow got worse. Traditionally, apparently, the family remained together to observe post-bond harmonization. This involved sitting in a shared space while subtle stimuli were introduced to see how the bonded individual responded. I was the stimulus. Every time my wife rested her head on my shoulder, the emotional field stabilized. Every time her sister circled the room, making pointed comments or brushing too close, the feedback spiked again. At one point, I stood abruptly. I need air. Both sisters reacted instantly. My wife reached for me, concern washing through the bond. Her sister's interest flared so brightly it made my head spin. That was when it hit me, the realization, sharp and unwelcome. They weren't just feeling me. They were feeling how I responded to them. When I focused on my wife, everything calmed. When I reacted, even negatively, to her sister, the bond lit up. Resistance, it turned out, still counted as engagement. I stopped moving. The room waited. I took a breath and did the only thing that felt remotely sane. I centered myself. Not on fear, not on attraction, not on embarrassment, but on intent. I turned back to my wife first. Met her eyes. Let myself feel exactly what I'd felt since the moment I'd chosen her: love, trust, safety, and an unshakable sense of rightness. The bond responded immediately. Warmth surged, steady and powerful, flooding the shared emotional space. I felt my wife's relief, her affection, her quiet joy. Then, carefully, deliberately, I looked at her sister. No flirtation. No resistance. Just calm acknowledgement. The feedback sputtered. Curiosity flickered, then confusion. The usual spike of confidence didn't arrive. Instead, there was something new, an echo of my own emotional clarity reflecting back at her. She straightened slowly, eyes narrowing. What did you just do? I stopped reacting, I said honestly, and started choosing. The word rippled outward, heavy with meaning. For the first time since the bond formed, the emotional noise quieted, not gone, but manageable. The sister studied me with an intensity that had nothing to do with desire now. Interesting, indeed. My wife squeezed my hand, pride blooming through the bond. I had a feeling this was only the beginning, but at least now, I wasn't completely unarmed. And the sister? She was smiling again. But this time, It wasn't playful. It was thoughtful. The following days settled into a strange rhythm, one I had no experience for and no manual to consult. Every time I thought I understood the bond, or thought I had figured out what the sisters were doing, it threw me a new curve. The wife maintained her gentle, steady presence, a lighthouse in a storm of unexpected emotions, while her sister hovered at the edges of my awareness like a mischievous comet, unpredictable and bright. I tried to maintain my usual calm. Tried to keep everything polite, reasonable, and distinctly human. But humans aren't used to this. Humans aren't used to someone feeling their confidence, amusement, or irritation before they even speak. It was exhausting and exhilarating all at once. One evening, her sister decided it was time for quality observation. She sat across from me at the table, legs crossed, chin propped delicately in her hand. Her gaze drilled into me, and I felt the emotional feedback spike immediately: interest, amusement, something dangerously close to desire. It was difficult to focus on dinner when my chest felt like it had been hijacked by someone with a very clear agenda. I reminded myself of two things. First, I was married, and second, humans were capable of making choices even when every instinct screamed otherwise. I met her eyes and nodded politely. That seemed to confuse her. She leaned back, smirked, and clearly recalculated her approach. Over the next few hours, she escalated. Little touches, casual remarks, intentionally provocative positioning. Every time I reacted, even subtly, the bond flared. But each time, I responded deliberately, polite, firm, steady. No flirtation, no indulgence, no giving in to whatever impulses the bond tried to push into my mind. I felt the push and pull physically, emotionally, like tug-of-war with invisible ropes. And then something unexpected happened. Her tactics, which had always triggered emotional chaos before, began to falter. The feedback from her side shifted, not gone, but now tinged with confusion, even admiration. She hadn't accounted for human choice. For someone who could see the emotional pull and decide not to be pulled. The realization dawned slowly, visible in her eyes before I even registered it consciously. The wife watched quietly, her expression calm but amused. I could feel her pride, a subtle surge of warmth and love rolling through the bond. I'd never realized how grounding that could be. It anchored me, and by extension, began to stabilize the sisters' responses. Suddenly, the sisters' attempts at chaos seemed almost playful, as if she were learning a new game with new rules she hadn't expected to exist. "Why aren't you reacting?" she asked finally, leaning forward so close that the tips of our fingers brushed across the table. The feedback hit like a jolt, and I resisted the immediate desire to flinch or laugh. "I'm choosing not to," I said carefully. "That's my choice." The words hung in the air. I felt her pause. Her amusement faltered. Confusion replaced it, and beneath that something subtle, something alien, respect. She hadn't anticipated resistance. She hadn't anticipated a human who could perceive the push and pull of a biological bond and decide on loyalty anyway. She was stunned by how calmly I could navigate this, how firmly I could stand without being swept away. The rest of the evening passed in an odd combination of tension and clarity. The sister, still amused but quieter, made small, considered observations, no longer trying to overpower the bond but instead watching, learning. My wife's presence remained steady, soothing the emotional noise, and I began to feel something almost revolutionary. The human ability to set boundaries was stabilizing the bond, not weakening it. My calm was changing their expectations. By the time dessert arrived, the sister leaned back and sighed. "You're unusual," she said, almost reluctantly. Through the bond, I could feel her evaluation, keen intelligence, emotional clarity, and unshakable loyalty. Traits rare in her culture, rarer still in humans. She was intrigued, studying me as though I were a puzzle she didn't fully understand but respected all the same. The wife smiled gently, squeezing my hand. Warmth flooded through, grounding me. She didn't need to say anything. The bond carried her pride, her love, her quiet amusement. I met her gaze and allowed myself to relax, feeling the first sense of true balance since the wedding. It was thrilling, yes, but safe, anchored by human choice and deliberate honesty. Her sister tilted her head again, studying me in silence for several minutes. I returned the gaze evenly, unflinching, not antagonistic, simply present. I could feel the subtle shift, the gradual acceptance forming in the alien mind across from me. The pull of desire remained, but it had softened into something like respect and curiosity, a new emotion entirely. Finally, she leaned back, muttering something to herself. The bond still hummed, but differently now. I could feel her processing, adapting, realizing that humans operated outside the predictable loops of her culture. She was intrigued, yes, but no longer aggressively attempting to override my choices. She was learning, adjusting, recalibrating. By the time I left the table that night, exhausted but triumphant in a quiet, human way, I understood something fundamental. My role in this bond wasn't just passive. I had power in choosing, not power over, but power through clarity, through intention, through deliberate affection and respect. Humans weren't biologically stronger than her species, weren't inherently more alluring, weren't telepathically gifted, but we were capable of something alien entirely: conscious choice, loyalty, and self-control. And that was what the sister hadn't expected. That was what changed everything. I collapsed into a chair in our quarters afterward, finally allowing myself a tired laugh. My wife rested her hand on mine, warmth flowing through me like a steady current. "You survived dinner," she said softly. "I survived a tactical assault by someone who can feel my emotions before I do," I replied. "Barely," she chuckled. "Barely is still victory." I looked at her and felt the bond settle into something new, secure, stable, grounded. Across the room, in the corner of my awareness, I felt her sister still watching, still learning, still curious. But now, I wasn't afraid, and I wasn't overwhelmed. I was human. And humans chose. That simple truth had started rewriting the rules of an entire alien family. For the first time since I'd married, I felt in control. And I had a sneaking suspicion the sister was about to learn that patience could be far more dangerous than desire. The days that followed were an exercise in controlled chaos, a test of patience and emotional endurance I had never imagined when I signed up for marriage. Her sister still hovered around, a constant presence in my awareness, but something had shifted. The wild, uncontrollable spikes of desire and amusement had softened into a quiet, curious observation. She was no longer attempting to dominate the bond, she was trying to understand it. And the more I realized that, the more I saw the subtle genius of her species. Learning wasn't just intellectual, it was emotional. Dinner tables remained minefields, but now I had a strategy. Every glance, every reaction, every carefully measured smile was a conscious choice. I responded with honesty rather than instinct, firmness rather than flattery. When the sister leaned in, I acknowledged her presence politely, without indulging the spike of energy it produced. When my wife touched my arm, I let myself feel her warmth fully, letting it stabilize the chaotic feedback. The more consistent I was, the more the sister's responses adjusted. Curiosity replaced compulsion, respect replaced mischief. It was a delicate balance, and I was starting to understand the rules by living them. At one point, the sister cornered me in the corridor, leaning casually against the polished wall. Her smile was slow, amused, and for the first time devoid of provocation. "I don't understand you," she said softly. You don't react like anyone else." "I choose how to react," I replied honestly. "I respect your presence, but my loyalty is with her. That doesn't mean I ignore you, it means I decide what to feel." She paused, her eyes narrowing as she processed the statement. I could feel her evaluating, parsing, struggling against instinct. Then came a subtle shift through the bond, respect, acknowledgement, a small flicker of admiration. Not attraction, not conquest, just recognition that humans operated by rules foreign to her species, and that those rules were unshakable. When the wife joined us moments later, I noticed the relief wash through her. Not relief at me, not relief at her sister, but relief that the bond was finally stabilizing. My presence anchored her sister's impulses, giving her a chance to observe and adjust rather than act on instinct. It was an unexpected victory, quiet but complete. The sister didn't disappear from our lives, far from it. She began participating in conversations with genuine interest rather than mischief, lingering around for observation without interference. The emotional field hummed quietly now instead of roaring, a subtle resonance that reminded me of how fragile and powerful bonds could be across species. She laughed at my jokes, not teasingly, not to provoke, but genuinely. And through that, I realized something extraordinary. The bond had transformed. Desire had become curiosity, chaos had become understanding, and my role had shifted from passive participant to stabilizing force. We eventually sat down for another family dinner, the first in weeks that didn't feel like walking across a minefield. The sisters' eyes met mine at the table, and for the first time, I saw no challenge in them, no game, no test. Only curiosity and something faintly like respect. I smiled, letting my calm show through the bond, and for the first time, she mirrored it. No sparks of emotional chaos, just a subtle echo of acknowledgement that the human before her was unlike any she had expected. Afterwards, back in our quarters, the wife leaned against me, her hand entwined with mine. "You did it," she whispered, warmth flooding through our shared resonance. "You stabilized it." I exhaled, tired but triumphant. "It wasn't about winning," I said. "It was about choosing." Her sister's presence lingered in my peripheral awareness, soft and quiet, no longer a threat but a witness. She had learned, I realized, that humans were strange in ways her species could barely understand. We were weak in body, limited in lifespan, and laughably fragile compared to them, but in our hearts, in our choices, we were something else entirely. The ability to decide, to act with clarity and loyalty, had given me an edge no instinct, no cultural imperative, no bond could override. In the following weeks, the family gatherings became calmer, more orderly. The sisters still teased occasionally, but now with thoughtfulness rather than chaos, as if she had learned that a human's mind was not a puzzle to be broken but a force to be respected. The wife grew more confident, laughter spreading easily as the bond deepened without interference. And I, standing firmly in the middle of this alien storm, realized something profound. Humans were dangerous, not in strength or speed, but in the quiet power of choice. At night, I would sometimes feel the echo of the bond, the subtle vibrations from both sisters, and I would smile. It was no longer overwhelming. It was a reminder of what had been accomplished. I had married her, yes, but I had also proven that humans could shape alien instincts through patience, honesty, and unwavering loyalty. Desire could be redirected, chaos could be balanced, and respect could be earned even when biology screamed otherwise. One evening, as the three of us shared tea, her sister politely joining us without pretense, she looked at me and said something almost shyly. "I wanted you," she admitted quietly. "But now I understand why she has you." I chuckled, squeezing my wife's hand. "And now you can enjoy being part of the family without trying to steal me." She laughed, genuinely this time, the kind of laugh that carried relief, amusement, and acceptance all at once. The bond vibrated softly, harmonizing around the room, no longer chaotic or dangerous, just a shared acknowledgement of connection. And in that moment, I understood something more clearly than ever. Marriage had not just bound me to one alien, it had rewritten expectations, reshaped instincts, and proved that humans could survive, and even thrive, in ways other species found unimaginable. We were fragile, we were limited, and yet, in our choices, we were unstoppable. For the first time, I felt the full weight of being human, and it was glorious.